Hi, it's John, and welcome to the channel. 3:15 a.m. Sunday, November the 2nd. I hope you're having a great start to your Sunday morning and a great weekend as well. And just a reminder, if you are in an area that has daylight saving time, put your clock back an hour and you get an extra hour this weekend. Isn't that awesome? If you'd done it before you went to bed last night, you'd still be sleeping. Okay, so as you can see, I'm ready to go, folks. Tom is my MP here in Calgary, Shepherd. I voted for him in the election earlier this year. And I kept his sign. I've got the little metal frame in the garage ready to put it up on my lawn. I think an election's coming, folks. I think it was Michelle Rumpel-Garner yesterday on X that was saying she's ready to go. She's got her election staff ready to go, folks. I think it's coming. Of course, I've got my Alberta Republic sign there. And today's topic has me thinking that we need to become an independent country here even more in Alberta, because if you have judges that made a ruling like we saw earlier this week, we certainly can't be part of a country that would do that. Billy Joel, by the way, will go right up there because I can't disrespect Billy. And I do have an Alberta flag. It's too big. I've got a smaller one coming that's going to go right there behind me, hopefully by midweek. What are we talking about today? We're going to talk about moral clarity. What? Don't tune out. Moral clarity. Moral clarity is the ability to have a firm, unambiguous understanding of the right and wrong in a specific situation and act accordingly. So what we're talking about today is the story we talked about yesterday. Same article I had up yesterday. Supreme Court striking down 1-year mandatory sentence for child blank possession prompts calls for Liberals to overrule. Now, there's been some moral clarity from a number of politicians in this country, and all of them are on the right. I woke up this morning saying, why haven't we heard any moral clarity from people on the left? And I'm talking in particular from the Prime Minister of this country, and in particular, the top lawyer in the country, and that would be Sean Fraser. There should be no ambiguity when it comes to this ruling. And there shouldn't be any dithering when it comes to Mark Carney and Sean Fraser. This is a ruling that has already been decided. It's not as if they would be influencing a decision. It's already been decided, but so far, basically crickets. In fact, in the case of the Attorney General, the top lawyer in the land, he says he has to study the ruling. No, I expect some moral clarity on this. Now, am I suggesting that Sean Fraser and the Prime Minister of the country, Mark Carney, are in favor of this kind of thing? No, but I would like some moral clarity on this. We've been waiting days. And there's a lot of politicians across this country have been very, very specific about what they believe. Alberta Premier calls on Ottawa to use Notwithstanding Clause over child blank. Here's Danielle Smith on X. This decision is outrageous. The possession of child blank is a heinous crime. And even a 1-year minimum sentence is already far too lenient. We call on the federal government to immediately invoke the Constitution's Notwithstanding Clause to overturn this ruling and ensure the protection of our children. This is what the Notwithstanding Clause is for. Activist judges, or judges who make a bad decision, and this is a bad decision. Here's Scott Moe. For those of you who don't know, Premier of Saskatchewan. If you ever wonder why I'm so adamant that elected legislatures, not unelected judges, should be the ones making the laws, read story. Mandatory minimum sentences for possession, access to child blank, unconstitutional, Supreme Court rules. Now, some of you will say he's not really conservative, but Doug Ford has some moral clarity here. Doug Ford tells feds to immediately overturn Supreme Court ruling against mandatory child blank sentences. And here is the leader of the Conservative Party of the country. This is Pierre Poilievre, who is being very clear what he believes on this issue, unlike Mark Carney and his top lawyer, who seem to have no moral clarity in this issue and are basically saying nothing.
So this ruling is wrong-headed, and I would oppose the ruling, and I would use the Notwithstanding Clause to overturn it. And my future government will introduce mandatory prison sentences for possession of child pornography so that dirtbags like this go away for a very long time.
Some of the reasoning from the justices was that they could see a scenario where two 18-year-olds exchange images and then have a mandatory minimum imposed on them. I don't know what you make of that reasoning.
I think the Supreme Court needs to get away from these imaginary scenarios. The scenario before them was two men in possession over a long period of time of hundreds of images and videos that were made by torturing innocent children. And with those facts in front of them, their conclusion actually should have been that the sentence should have been much more than the 1 year and 9 months that the two dirtbag offenders received. They should go away for a very long time. Frankly, if I had my way as a father, I would lock them up and throw away the key.
Well done, Pierre Poilievre, leader of the official opposition, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. An unambiguous answer and moral clarity. And I expect an unambiguous answer from Mark Carney. It's been days, we've heard nothing. I expect moral clarity from the Prime Minister of this country on this issue. We've heard nothing. I expect moral clarity on this issue from the Attorney General, and he's being ambiguous. There's an article here at the CBC website about this. Friday's decision deeming those 1-year prison sentences unconstitutional not only split the bench 5-4, but has received swift backlash from provincial and federal leaders. I've talked about the provincial leaders who have the moral clarity. Of course, in this article, they have to take a shot at Poilievre regarding something that happened back during the election campaign. You'll remember this. It's not the first time Poilievre has vowed to use the controversial clause to override the Supreme Court. Controversial clause is what they say. During the spring campaign, he promised to invoke the clause to impose consecutive life sentences on multiple murderers. The top court ruled in 2022 that imposing consecutive life sentences violates an offender's charter rights. I don't think imposing the notwithstanding clause when it comes to multiple murderers was a wrong thing. I think judicial activists made this ruling back in 2022. I think most Canadians believe if you murder multiple people, you should go to jail for a long time. Just like people who have child blank in their possession that shows horrific things should spend at least a year in jail. At least. Poilievre's being very clear on that. Where does Sean Fraser stand on this issue? We don't know because a spokesperson was talking for him. A spokesperson for Attorney General Sean Fraser's office said they're reviewing the ruling's implications carefully. Why? You either agree with this or you don't, Mr. Fraser. Are you going to invoke the notwithstanding clause? You should. It's not as if commenting on this issue now after the ruling has been made is going to influence it at all. Where do you stand? I know why. I think I know why you're not going to invoke the notwithstanding clause or even brought it up or have a spokesperson speaking for you. Crimes that exploit or abuse blank are among the most serious and reprehensible in our society, said the spokesperson Lola Dandibayeva in an emailed statement. Plain and simple, child blank should face the toughest penalties Canadian law allows. Friday's decision adds to a growing pile of cases where the Supreme Court has struck down mandatory minimums. Here's Sean Fraser's X account. Really nothing on here about that. He talks about the law a lot, but he hasn't made any comments on this. Mark Carney over here, here's his X account. And basically, this is a lot of propaganda about his upcoming budget, on how he's doing great things for the country. He's flying around the world, spreading his CO2, accomplishing absolutely nothing, pulling the wool over the eyes of the people who voted for him in the last election. And no doubt there's a lot of talk about Canada being in a crisis and ruptured because of Donald Trump. But why are they not coming out immediately and saying the notwithstanding clause should be used in this case? Because the federal government is challenging the notwithstanding clause. 5 premiers urge Carney to withdraw court submission on notwithstanding clause. 5 premiers say Ottawa must withdraw its recent recall for limits on the notwithstanding clause because it amounts to a complete disavowal of the bargain that spawned the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Canada's Justice Minister rules out withdrawing legal submission on the notwithstanding clause. It wouldn't look good, I think, if the government immediately came out and used the notwithstanding clause when they're fighting it in court right now. Now, as far as the notwithstanding clause goes, a great article here. No charter without Section 33, how 6 provinces are defending the notwithstanding clause. If the Carney government has its way, the Supreme Court of Canada will take up among the most contentious questions of the Canadian Constitution, what's the role of the judiciary versus Parliament, and what, if any, constraints should be imposed on Parliament's use of the notwithstanding clause embedded in Section 33 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Alberta, the hard-won compromise. Alberta's factum situates Section 33 squarely in its historical and political context. It characterizes the clause as a hard-fought, hard-won compromise, without which there would have been no constitutional agreement in 1982 to begin with. Simply put, there would have been no charter without Section 33, it reads. I truly believe that the government is not talking about the notwithstanding clause, and Carney has said nothing and provided no moral clarity on this yet because they're challenging this in court right now. And I expect moral clarity from the people who run my country, and I'm getting it from people like Doug Ford, Scott Moe, Danielle Smith, Pierre Poilievre, but nothing so far from people on the left. Meanwhile, just to end this, Toronto Blue Jays lost last night. Everything Mark Carney touches turns to shit. Yeah. Well done, the pleb. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. I will see you in the next one. I tip my big blue mug of coffee to you.